Millionaire CEO finds out his surrogate is a virgin. What he did next changed his life forever. When billionaire tech CEO Alexander Kane hired Amara to be his surrogate, he thought it was a simple business arrangement. But when he discovered the beautiful Jamaican woman had never been intimate with anyone and didn't understand what surrogacy actually required, everything changed. What neither of them knew was that Admiral Harrison, the man who arranged their meeting, had been searching for his lost daughter for 20 years, and Amara was the child he'd been forced to abandon during a covert military mission in Jamaica. Get ready for a story that will leave you speechless and make you believe in the power of destiny. Stay with me until the very end, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and comment your thoughts throughout the story. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible narratives. The mahogany-paneled conference room at Sterling & Associates felt more like a courtroom than a place to discuss bringing new life into the world. Alexander Kane sat at the head of the polished table, his steel-gray eyes reviewing documents that would legally bind a stranger to carry his child for 9 months. At 34, the tech billionaire had built an empire from nothing, but the one thing his wealth couldn't buy was the family he desperately wanted. The candidate has been thoroughly vetted, Admiral Harrison stated, sliding a manila folder across the table to Alexander. At 62, the decorated military officer commanded respect even in civilian settings, his bearing rigid with decades of Navy discipline. Miss Amara Williams meets all your specified requirements. Alexander opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents that painted a picture of a 26-year-old woman with warm brown skin, intelligent dark eyes, and a smile that seemed genuine despite the formal nature of the portraits. Her background showed a nursing degree from University of the West Indies, volunteer work at local clinics, and letters of recommendation that praised her character, reliability, and compassionate nature. She's beautiful, Alexander observed, studying the photographs with the analytical eye he brought to all business decisions. And her medical records show perfect health, no genetic predispositions to inherited diseases, excellent nutritional status. But Admiral, I need to ask, has she done this before? Been a surrogate? No, this would be her first time. But that shouldn't concern you. Her medical evaluation shows she's perfectly capable of carrying a pregnancy to term. That's not what I'm asking about. Alexander set down the folder and looked directly at the Admiral. I need to know about her experience level. Personal experience. Admiral Harrison's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes that Alexander couldn't quite read. Her personal history is private, but I can assure you she meets your moral and character standards. Admiral, I'm going to be blunt because this arrangement requires complete transparency. My late wife Sarah's will contain very specific language about any children born after her death. The child must be carried by someone of impeccable moral character and purity. Sarah was old-fashioned about these things, and if the inheritance trustees have any reason to question the surrogate's background, my son or daughter could lose billions. I understand your concerns. Miss Williams is exactly what your late wife would have approved of. Alexander studied the Admiral's carefully controlled expression, sensing there was more to this story than he was being told. Harrison had approached him 6 months ago with the offer to arrange a surrogacy after Alexander's third attempt at IVF with a professional surrogate had failed. The Admiral had promised to find someone special, someone whose character would honor Sarah's memory, while giving Alexander the child he'd longed for since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago. Where did you find her? Through military connections. Her late father served under my command years ago. Outstanding man, died in service to his country. I've kept track of his daughter as a matter of honoring his sacrifice. And she's agreed to the arrangement? She's considering it. The financial compensation would solve significant problems for her family. Her mother has been struggling since her husband's death, and Miss Williams has been supporting younger siblings while working multiple jobs to pay off nursing school loans. Alexander felt a familiar pang of guilt about using financial desperation as leverage, but he also knew that surrogacy was a business transaction that benefited both parties. He would provide life-changing money, she would provide the gift of a child. It was fair, legal, and would fulfill Sarah's dying wish that he become a father. I'd like to meet her. That can be arranged. However, there are some cultural considerations to keep in mind. such as Miss Williams was raised in a very traditional family. Conservative values, strong religious background. She may need some explanation about the medical procedures involved in modern surrogacy. Something in the Admiral's tone made Alexander pause. What kind of explanation? The kind that ensures she fully understands what she's agreeing to before contracts are signed. The cryptic response left Alexander with more questions than answers, but Admiral Harrison was already standing to leave, indicating that the preliminary discussion was over. I'll arrange a meeting for tomorrow evening. Neutral location, informal setting. She needs to feel comfortable before any legal discussions begin. After the Admiral left, Alexander remained in the conference room, staring at Amara Williams' photograph and wondering why he felt like he was missing crucial information about the arrangement. In 3 years of attempting surrogacy, he had never encountered this level of delicacy around the process. Professional surrogates understood the clinical nature of IVF, the legal frameworks, the emotional boundaries required for successful arrangements. But something about Admiral Harrison's careful words suggested that Amara Williams might be approaching this situation with different expectations entirely. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at a quiet restaurant in downtown Kingston, chosen specifically because it was far from the military base where Admiral Harrison was stationed and neutral enough to put everyone at ease. Alexander had flown in that morning, staying at a resort hotel that felt surreal given the serious nature of his visit. Jamaica's warmth and beauty struck him as he waited at a corner table, watching the sunset paint the Caribbean sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah would have loved this place, he thought, remembering her dream of traveling to the islands before cancer stole her strength and time. Mr. Kane. The voice was soft, musical with a lilting accent that made every word sound like poetry. Alexander stood and turned to see Amara Williams approaching his table, and his breath caught in his throat. The photographs hadn't captured the graceful way she moved, the intelligence that sparkled in her dark eyes, or the natural elegance that made her simple sundress look like evening wear. Miss Williams. Thank you for coming. Please, call me Amara. Her handshake was firm but brief, and Alexander noticed she seemed nervous despite her composed exterior. As they settled into their seats, Alexander found himself studying her face, looking for signs of the sophisticated understanding he expected from someone entering a surrogacy arrangement. Instead, he saw something that surprised him, genuine innocence mixed with curiosity about why a wealthy American businessman wanted to meet with her. Admiral Harrison told me you might be able to help with my family situation, Amara said, folding her hands carefully in her lap. But he wasn't very specific about what kind of help you need. What did he tell you exactly? That you lost your wife and want children very badly. That you're willing to provide financial assistance to a woman who could help you become a father. She paused, her expression growing concerned. Mr. Kane, I hope you're not looking for a new wife, because I'm not interested in marriage arrangements. Alexander felt alarm bells going off in his mind. Amara, what exactly do you think I'm proposing? I'm not entirely sure. The Admiral said you needed someone to help you have a child, someone with good character who could be trusted with an important responsibility. He said the compensation would be enough to pay off my student loans and help my mother with medical expenses. And you assumed that meant? I assumed you wanted someone to adopt a child with you? Or perhaps help care for children you already have. Amara's confusion was genuine, and Alexander realized with growing horror that Admiral Harrison had not explained the surrogacy arrangement at all. Amara, Alexander said gently, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding about what I'm asking you to do. What kind of misunderstanding? Alexander took a deep breath, realizing he was about to explain surrogacy to someone who clearly had no idea what it involved. I'm looking for a woman to carry my biological child. A surrogate mother. The process involves medical procedures that would result in you becoming pregnant with a baby that would be legally and biologically mine. The color drained from Amara's face as the implications hit her. You want me to have your baby? To carry my baby, yes. Through artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. You would be the gestational carrier, but I would be the biological father and legal parent. Amara's hands trembled as she processed this information. Mr. Kane, I think Admiral Harrison didn't explain this clearly because he knew I would never agree to such a thing. Why not? Because I'm not. I don't. I've never been with a man before. The admission hung in the air between them, and Alexander felt his world shift as he realized what Admiral Harrison had brought him. Not an experienced surrogate who understood the clinical nature of the arrangement, but a virgin who had been led to believe she was meeting about some vague childcare position. Amara, Alexander said softly, are you telling me you've never been intimate with anyone? Yes. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I was raised to save myself for marriage. I've been focused on my education and helping my family. I haven't had time for relationships, and I certainly never considered this. Alexander felt a mixture of attraction, protectiveness, and fury at Admiral Harrison for placing them both in this impossible situation. Amara Williams wasn't just beautiful and intelligent. She was innocent in a way that made the surrogacy arrangement feel like a violation of everything pure in the world. I think, Alexander said carefully, we both need to have a very serious conversation with Admiral Harrison about what exactly he thought he was arranging. As if summoned by their need for answers, Admiral Harrison appeared at their table, his military bearing rigid with what Alexander was beginning to recognize as guilt. How is the dinner proceeding? The Admiral asked, though his eyes were fixed on Amara's distressed expression. Admiral, Alexander said with deadly calm, I think you owe both of us an explanation about what the hell you thought you were doing. Admiral Harrison's military composure cracked as he sank into the empty chair at their table. His hands, steady through decades of combat decisions, trembled as he reached for his water glass. Amara, he said quietly, there's something I need to tell you about your father. My father is dead. You said you served with him. Amara's voice carried a warning edge that surprised Alexander. Your father isn't dead. I am your father. The restaurant seemed to freeze around them. Alexander watched Amara's face cycle through disbelief, shock, and then a fury that transformed her gentle features into something fierce. That's impossible. My father died when I was 6 years old. My mother has his death certificate. Your mother has a fabricated document I arranged to protect you both. I was deep undercover in Jamaica, investigating arms trafficking through Kingston ports. When I met your mother, Maria, the mission was supposed to last 6 months. Instead, I stayed 2 years because I fell in love. Harrison's voice broke slightly. But my cover was blown. The cartel I was investigating discovered I was American military intelligence. They put a bounty on my head and threatened anyone connected to me. I had to disappear or watch you and Maria die. So you let us think you were dead instead? I let you think I was dead so you could live. The death certificate gave Maria widow benefits. Military insurance paid for your education. I've been sending money through various channels for 20 years, watching from a distance as you grew into the remarkable woman sitting here. Alexander felt like an intruder witnessing this family revelation, but he couldn't leave without understanding how it connected to the surrogacy arrangement. Admiral, what does this have to do with why you brought us together? Harrison turned to Alexander with desperate eyes. Because Maria is dying. Kidney failure. The medical bills have exhausted everything I've been able to send secretly. Amara has been working 3 jobs trying to save enough for the transplant surgery, but she's still $50,000 short. You thought I'd pay $50,000 for a surrogate? I thought you'd pay $300,000 to a woman whose character matches what your late wife wanted for your child's mother. And I thought Amara would agree to help you because the money would save her mother's life. Without telling her what surrogacy actually involved, Alexander said coldly. I was going to explain. You were going to manipulate your own daughter into carrying a stranger's child because you're too much of a coward to reveal yourself and support your family directly? Amara stood abruptly. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. She looked between the 2 men with disgust. Both of you think you can make decisions about my body and my life without consulting me? Amara, please, Harrison began. No. 20 years of lies don't get fixed with one conversation. She grabbed her purse. Mr. Kane, thank you for dinner, but whatever arrangement you had with this man is over. She was halfway to the exit when Alexander caught up with her. Amara, wait. Let me drive you home. We can talk about this rationally. Rationally. She spun to face him. You want me to rationally discuss carrying your child when I've never even been kissed? You want me to rationally process that my dead father has been alive for 20 years, watching me struggle while pretending to be a stranger? I want to help you figure out what comes next. For all of us. Something in his tone made her pause. What do you mean? I mean your mother needs surgery, you need money, and I need a woman of exceptional character to carry my child. The only thing that's changed is that we all know the truth now. The truth being that your potential surrogate is a virgin who doesn't understand human reproduction. Alexander felt heat rise in his cheeks. The truth being that my potential surrogate is an extraordinary woman who deserves to make an informed choice about her own future. They stared at each other in the parking lot, both aware that the next word spoken would determine whether this complicated situation became a disaster or something else entirely. Take me to see my mother, Amara said finally. If we're going to discuss this insane arrangement, she deserves to know what her husband has been planning. The drive to Maria Williams' house took them through Kingston's winding streets, past markets closing for the evening and families gathering on front porches. Alexander found himself stealing glances at Amara, who sat rigidly in the passenger seat, staring out the window as if seeing her hometown with new eyes. Can I ask you something? He said as they waited at a traffic light. You can ask. Are you angry because Admiral Harrison lied about being your father, or because he arranged this meeting without explaining the details? I'm angry because every man in my life apparently thinks he knows what's best for me better than I do. My mother included, since she obviously knew about the money he's been sending. How do you know she knew? Because we could never afford the things we had. The house payments when she was barely working. My university fees. The medical treatments she's been receiving. I always wondered where the money came from, but I was afraid to ask too many questions. The light changed, and Alexander navigated toward the address Amara had given him, a modest neighborhood where small houses sat behind careful gardens and security bars. There's something I need to know before we get there, Amara said as they pulled into the driveway. This surrogacy arrangement, it doesn't require us to be together physically? No. It's done through medical procedures at a fertility clinic. You would never have to be intimate with me unless you chose to be. And the money? $300,000. Would be yours regardless of whether you complete the pregnancy. Payment for your time, your health risks, and your commitment to the process. Amara was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Mr. Kane, Alexander, can I ask you something personal? Yes. Why haven't you remarried? You're wealthy, attractive, obviously capable of finding a wife who could give you children naturally. The question hit deeper than Alexander expected. Because I'm not looking for a wife. I'm looking for a child. Sarah was the love of my life. No one could replace her. But she wanted me to be a father, and this seems like the most honest way to honor that wish. Honest. I'm not pretending to love someone to get them to have my baby. I'm offering fair compensation for a service that benefits both of us. And after the baby is born, you'd be free to live your life however you choose. No obligations, no ongoing relationship required. Maria Williams opened the front door before they could knock, her face showing a mixture of curiosity and concern about her daughter arriving with a strange man in an expensive car. Mama, Amara said in patois that Alexander couldn't follow but whose emotional weight was unmistakable, we need to talk about Papa. Maria's face went white. What about your Papa? About how he's not dead, and he's been lying to us for 20 years. As the family confrontation unfolded in rapid-fire Jamaican Creole, Alexander stood awkwardly in the small living room, understanding that he was witnessing the collapse and reconstruction of a family that had been built on carefully maintained lies. When the shouting died down and the tears began, he realized that his simple desire for a surrogate had unleashed forces that would change all their lives in ways none of them could predict. The virgin surrogate he'd thought he was hiring was actually the daughter of a man living under false identity. The woman carrying his child would be connected to him by secrets that went far deeper than any legal contract. And the arrangement he'd thought would be purely business was about to become the most complicated relationship of his life. Maria Williams sat on her threadbare sofa, oxygen tank beside her chair, staring at the man who had fathered her child 26 years ago. Her once beautiful face was gaunt from kidney disease, but her eyes blazed with the same fire Alexander recognized in Amara. "Harrison Mackenzie," she said in perfect English, abandoning the patois. "Navy Intelligence. Serial number 4477829. I've kept that information in case I ever needed to hunt you down." "Maria," Admiral Harrison stepped forward, but she held up a trembling hand. 20 years of medical bills mysteriously paid. 20 years of envelopes with cash appearing under my door. 20 years of wondering if my daughter would grow up thinking her father abandoned us or died serving his country. You chose the lie that made you look honorable. I chose the lie that kept you alive. Did you? Maria stood slowly, every movement showing her physical deterioration. Or did you choose the lie that let you sleep at night while living your important American life? Alexander watched this confrontation unfold, realizing that whatever decision was made about the surrogacy would emerge from decades of unresolved pain between these people. "Mama," Amara said gently, "we can discuss Papa later. Right now we need to talk about Mr. Kane's offer." "What offer?" Alexander cleared his throat, feeling like an intruder but knowing this conversation was crucial. "Mrs. Williams, I've asked Amara to carry my child through surrogacy. The compensation would be enough to pay for your kidney transplant and give your family financial security." Maria's eyes sharpened as she assessed him. "And what do you get for my virgin daughter that you can't get from a professional surrogate?" The blunt question made both Alexander and Amara flush with embarrassment. "Mama." Amara protested. "Child, you think I don't know why rich American men come to Jamaica looking for young women? You think I don't understand what makes you different from the women in his own country?" "Mrs. Williams," Alexander said carefully, "I'm not here because Amara is Jamaican or young or inexperienced. I'm here because Admiral Harrison convinced me she has the moral character my late wife would have wanted in the mother of my child." "Character?" Maria laughed bitterly. "What you mean is purity. What you mean is a woman innocent enough that you don't have to worry about complications." "That's not." "Yes, it is." Maria moved to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where she'd raised her daughter alone. "My child has been saving herself for marriage because that's what good girls do. You want to use that goodness to make your baby, then walk away clean." Alexander felt the accusation hit home because it contained truth he didn't want to examine. The arrangement would be beneficial for everyone involved. Beneficial for who? For you, getting a child without messy emotional entanglements? For Harrison, clearing his conscience by finally providing for his family? What about beneficial for Amara? The money. The money solves our immediate crisis. But what about afterward? What happens to my daughter after she carries your child and hands it over to a stranger? Amara had been silent during this exchange, but now she spoke with quiet authority. "What happens afterward is my choice to make." Both adults turned to her, surprised by her calm tone. "I'm 26 years old. I'm educated, employed, and capable of making decisions about my own body and my own future. The question isn't what's beneficial for me, it's whether I choose to accept Mr. Kane's offer." "And?" Maria asked. "I choose to accept it. With conditions." Alexander felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of conditions?" "First, I want full medical transparency. Complete health records from you, genetic testing, family history. If I'm carrying your child, I want to know what I'm passing on." "Agreed." "Second, I want involvement in prenatal care decisions. I'm not just an incubator. If I'm pregnant, I have opinions about nutrition, exercise, medical procedures." "That seems reasonable." "Third, I want to meet your family. Parents, siblings, close friends. I want to understand who this child's father really is before I agree to create a life with you." Alexander hesitated. His family relationships were complicated. "Is there a problem with that condition?" My parents are dead. I have a younger sister who lives in California, but we're not close. My closest relationships are professional colleagues and my late wife's family. Then I want to meet Sarah's family. I want to understand the woman whose memory is driving this decision. The request surprised Alexander. Why? Because I need to know if carrying your child honors her memory or betrays it. If she wanted you to be a father, what did she want for the child? What kind of mother did she envision for your baby? Maria studied her daughter with new respect. Those are intelligent conditions. I have one more. I want Papa. She looked at Admiral Harrison with steel in her voice. I want Harrison to explain every detail of why he abandoned us and how he's been involved in our lives since. All of it. Before I make any final commitment. Admiral Harrison looked like he was facing a court-martial. Amara, some of those details involve classified operations. Then get them declassified or forget the surrogacy arrangement. Your choice. The room fell silent as everyone processed Amara's terms. Alexander realized he was no longer negotiating with the innocent young woman he'd met at dinner. Amara Williams was revealing herself to be formidable, strategic, and completely in control of this situation. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Alexander said. The physical process of pregnancy. The medical procedures, the lifestyle changes, the realities of carrying a child you won't be keeping. What about them? Are you prepared for the emotional complexity? The hormonal changes that might make you feel attached to a baby you've agreed to give away. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Are you prepared for the possibility that I might want to be part of this child's life even after birth? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Alexander had assumed that surrogacy meant complete separation after delivery, but Amara was suggesting something more complicated. What would that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe I'd want to be Auntie Amara who visits on birthdays. Maybe I'd want updates on their development. Maybe I'd want nothing at all. But I want the right to decide that based on how I feel after experiencing pregnancy and childbirth. That's not typically how surrogacy arrangements work. Then maybe we're not creating a typical arrangement. Maria watched this negotiation with growing admiration for her daughter's maturity. Alexander, she said, using his first name for the first time, what my daughter is proposing requires trust between strangers. Are you prepared for that level of uncertainty? Alexander thought about Sarah's dying wish that he become a father, about the 3 failed attempts at traditional surrogacy, about the loneliness that had driven him to accept Admiral Harrison's unconventional offer. Yes, he said. I think I am. Then we have an agreement in principle, Amara said. Pending Harrison's full disclosure and my meeting with Sarah's family. Admiral Harrison stood to leave, clearly overwhelmed by the evening's revelations and his daughter's unexpected strength. I'll arrange security clearance for a full briefing within the week, he said. And Alexander, I'll coordinate with Sarah's family for whatever meetings Amara requires. After he left, the 3 remaining people sat in Maria's small living room, contemplating the complexity of what they just agreed to create together. Mama, Amara said softly, are you angry that I accepted? Child, I'm proud that you negotiated like the intelligent woman I raised you to be. But I'm terrified of what this arrangement might cost your heart. Alexander felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He'd thought he was hiring a surrogate. Instead, he'd become entangled with a family whose courage and complexity humbled him. The virgin who didn't understand surrogacy had just taught him that the most important agreements couldn't be reduced to legal contracts. The Hamptons estate sprawled across manicured lawns like something from a magazine, all white columns and pristine gardens. Amara stepped out of Alexander's car feeling completely out of place in her simple blue dress, but determined to understand the woman whose memory had shaped this entire arrangement. They're expecting us, Alexander said, his own tension visible despite his familiarity with the setting. Sarah's parents, Robert and Eleanor Whitman. Her younger brother James lives here too. He's been struggling since her death. The front door opened before they could knock, revealing a silver-haired woman whose elegant bearing couldn't quite hide the grief lines around her eyes. Alexander, Eleanor Whitman said warmly, embracing him. It's been too long. Eleanor, I'd like you to meet Amara Williams. She's the young woman carrying our grandchild, Eleanor finished, studying Amara with undisguised curiosity. Sarah told us this day would come. Amara felt Alexander stiffen beside her. What do you mean? Come inside, dear. There are things you both need to understand. The drawing room was filled with photographs of Sarah, graduation pictures, wedding photos, family gatherings. But what struck Amara was how many images showed Sarah volunteering at clinics, working with children, visiting what appeared to be Caribbean communities. Sarah was beautiful, Amara said, studying a photograph of Alexander's late wife building what looked like a school. She was obsessed with helping others, Robert Whitman said, entering the room. Sometimes to her own detriment. Dad, a younger man, protested from the doorway. James Whitman looked like a male version of Sarah, but where her photos showed joy, his face carried shadows. Don't start. James, Eleanor said gently. We agreed you'd be part of this conversation. Alexander looked confused. What conversation? I thought we were just introducing Amara to Sarah's family. Sit down, both of you, Eleanor instructed. It's time you understood why Sarah was so specific about the kind of woman who should carry your child. She pulled out a leather journal, its pages filled with Sarah's handwriting. This is Sarah's final journal, written during her last months. She knew the cancer was winning, knew you'd want children after she was gone. But she had very specific ideas about how that should happen. Eleanor began reading. Alex will try traditional surrogacy first. Clinical, professional, emotionally distant. It won't work because he's trying to honor my memory by avoiding any real connection with the mother of his child. But that's not what I want for him or for our baby. Sarah wrote about surrogacy before she died? Alexander asked, stunned. She wrote about you, Alex. She knew you'd need guidance to become the father you were meant to be. Eleanor turned several pages. The woman who carries Alex's child must be someone who challenges him to grow, not someone who makes his life convenient. She must be pure in heart but strong in will. She must come from struggle so she understands what truly matters. Amara felt her skin prickle with unease. She was describing someone specific. James stepped forward, his expression bitter. She was describing you specifically. Sarah spent her final year researching Caribbean communities, looking for the daughter of a military officer she'd met during her volunteer work. That's impossible, Alexander said. Sarah never met Admiral Harrison. She met him in Haiti, Eleanor continued, pulling out photographs. During her medical mission work 5 years ago. They had long conversations about family, sacrifice, the children he'd been forced to abandon for their safety. The photographs showed Sarah working in a clinic, and in several images, Admiral Harrison was clearly visible in military uniform, observing her work. Harrison told her about Amara, James said. About his brilliant daughter in Jamaica who was studying nursing, working multiple jobs to support her sick mother, saving herself for marriage despite having opportunities with wealthy men who would have made her life easier. Amara felt the room spinning. You're saying Sarah planned this? All of it? Sarah planted the idea with Harrison that you would be perfect for Alexander, Eleanor confirmed. She suggested he approach Alex about surrogacy after the clinical attempts failed. She even predicted that you'd initially refuse because Harrison wouldn't explain the arrangement clearly. Alexander stood abruptly, pacing to the window. So this entire arrangement was manipulated by my dead wife. It was guided by a woman who loved you enough to choose the mother of your child before she died, Eleanor corrected. Sarah knew you needed more than just a baby, Alex. You needed connection, purpose, something to pull you out of the grief that was consuming you. And Amara? What was she supposed to get from this manipulation? James answered, his voice sharp with old resentments. Amara was supposed to get what Sarah always gave people, the chance to be better than they thought they could be. Sarah believed carrying your child would transform both of you. How could she know that? Amara asked quietly. Eleanor opened the journal to its final entries. Amara Williams has spent her life caring for others while sacrificing her own dreams. Alex has spent his life building walls to protect himself from more loss. A child will force them both to be vulnerable, to trust each other, to discover that love doesn't always come in the packages we expect. She was matchmaking, Alexander said with disbelief. From beyond the grave. She was loving you, Eleanor replied simply, even knowing she wouldn't be here to see the result. Amara had been silent during these revelations, but now she stood, her face unreadable. I need some air. She walked out onto the terrace, leaving the others to process Sarah's elaborate posthumous plan. Alexander followed her outside, finding her staring at the ocean. Are you angry? He asked. I don't know what I am. 3 days ago, I thought I was meeting about a childcare job. Now I discover that my entire life has been orchestrated by a woman I never met, who died 3 years ago. We can call it off. All of it. You don't have to be part of Sarah's plan. Amara turned to face him, and Alexander was struck again by her beauty, but also by the intelligence that Sarah had somehow recognized from thousands of miles away. Can I ask you something? Yes. Do you want children because Sarah wanted you to have them, or because you genuinely want to be a father? The question forced Alexander to examine motivations he'd never questioned. Both, I think. Sarah's death made me realize how much I want family, want legacy, want something that lasts beyond business success. And me? Am I just Sarah's choice for your child's mother, or am I someone you choose for yourself? Alexander looked at this remarkable woman who had negotiated with him like an equal, challenged his assumptions, and somehow made him feel more alive than he had in 3 years. 3 days ago, you were Sarah's choice, he said honestly. Today, you're mine too. Why? Because you're not what I expected. You're stronger, smarter, more complicated. You make me want to be worthy of carrying a child with you. Amara considered this. Sarah's journal. Did she predict how this would end? I don't know. Do you want me to ask? No. Amara's smile was small but genuine. I think I'd rather discover our ending for ourselves. They stood together on the terrace, two people whose lives had been shaped by forces beyond their control, trying to decide whether to follow a dead woman's plan or create their own path forward. Behind them, through the French doors, Sarah's family watched anxiously, hoping that love could indeed transcend manipulation and that their daughter's final gift would bring healing to everyone she'd chosen to protect. The fertility clinic in Miami felt like a spaceship compared to the rural Jamaican hospital where Amara had trained. Dr. Rebecca Chen, Alexander's reproductive specialist, spread medical charts across her desk while Amara tried not to fidget in the leather chair. Miss Williams, I need to be completely frank about what we're dealing with, Dr. Chen said, her tone professionally gentle. Your medical history presents some unique challenges for traditional IVF. What kind of challenges? Alexander asked, leaning forward. Amara's hymen is completely intact, which means standard embryo transfer procedures would be traumatic. We're looking at surgical intervention just to complete the implantation process. Amara felt heat flood her cheeks. What does that mean exactly? It means we need to have a very honest conversation about your comfort level with medical procedures that will fundamentally change your body before we even begin the pregnancy process. The clinical discussion of her most private anatomy made Amara want to disappear, but Dr. Chen's matter-of-fact tone helped her focus on the medical realities rather than the embarrassment. There are alternatives, Dr. Chen continued. We could recommend a period of gradual preparation, or we could proceed with conscious sedation for the transfer procedure. But either way, this process will be more invasive for you than for women who have been sexually active. Alexander studied Amara's face, clearly seeing her discomfort. Doctor, could you give us a moment? After Dr. Chen left, they sat in silence for several minutes. This isn't what you signed up for, Alexander said finally. Actually, it's exactly what I signed up for. I just didn't understand the details. Are you having second thoughts? Amara considered the question seriously. I'm having realistic thoughts. This isn't going to be easy, and it's going to change me physically in ways I never anticipated. We can stop here. No judgment, no pressure. Is that what you want? Alexander looked at her directly. What I want is for you to make the choice that feels right for you, not for your mother's medical bills or Harrison's guilt or Sarah's posthumous plans. And what feels right to you? Having this conversation feels right. You being able to ask questions and set boundaries feels right. The fact that you're not just agreeing to everything because you need the money feels right. Dr. Chen knocked and re-entered. Have you had time to discuss? We'd like to proceed, Amara said, her voice steady. But I want to understand every step of the process before we begin. Of course. Let's start with baseline fertility testing for both of you, genetic screening, and a comprehensive medical evaluation. Then we'll create a timeline that allows you to prepare both physically and emotionally. 3 hours later, they emerged from the clinic with folders full of information, appointment schedules, and a new understanding of how complex their arrangement would become. Lunch. Alexander suggested as they walked toward his car. I need to call Harrison first. He's supposed to give me his full disclosure today. They found a quiet cafe where Amara could make the call privately while Alexander reviewed the medical paperwork. When she returned to their table, her expression was grim. Bad news. Complicated news. Harrison's been cleared to tell me about his covert operations, but some of the details explain why he was so desperate to arrange the surrogacy. What kind of details? The arms trafficking ring he was investigating in Jamaica? It's still active, and they recently discovered that he had a daughter and ex-partner living there. Alexander felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Meaning Mama and I have been in danger for months without knowing it. The kidney failure that's been getting worse? Harrison thinks it might not be entirely natural. Someone's been poisoning your mother? It's possible. Low-level toxins that would mimic kidney disease, administered over time through water supply or food contamination. Harrison's been monitoring the situation, but he couldn't act without revealing his identity and making us bigger targets. Alexander stared at her. Amara, are you telling me that entering this surrogacy arrangement was also about getting you and your mother out of Jamaica before someone kills you? I'm telling you that Harrison has multiple motivations for everything he does, and protecting his family might be more urgent than I realized. Jesus Christ. Alexander ran his hands through his hair. So we're not just dealing with surrogacy complications and family secrets. We're dealing with actual physical danger. Only if we stay in Jamaica. If I'm in the United States for the pregnancy, I'm protected. And the medical treatment here could help identify what's been making Mama sick. You want to bring your mother here? I want to save her life. Whether that happens in Jamaica or Miami depends on what the doctors find. Alexander looked at this woman who continued to surprise him with her strength and complexity. What do you need from me? I need you to understand that this arrangement isn't just about having your baby anymore. It's about keeping my family alive while figuring out if we can trust each other with our lives. And if we can't, then we're all in serious trouble, because Harrison's enemies don't distinguish between business partners and personal relationships. That evening, in Alexander's Miami penthouse, they received a call that changed everything. Maria Williams had been rushed to the hospital in Kingston, her kidney function failing rapidly. The doctors weren't sure she'd survive the week. I have to go back, Amara said, already reaching for her phone to book flights. Absolutely not. If Harrison's right about the poisoning, returning to Jamaica could get you killed. Then what do you suggest? Let my mother die while I hide in your penthouse. Alexander made a decision that surprised them both. We bring her here. Tonight. Medical evacuation, private jet, immediate treatment at Miami General. Whatever it costs. Alexander, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So could the surrogacy arrangement. Consider it an advance payment. Why would you do that for a woman you've never met? Alexander paused, realizing his answer would reveal more about his feelings than he was ready to admit. Because she raised the woman who's going to carry my child. Because family matters. And because... He hesitated. Because I'm starting to care about what happens to you beyond just the pregnancy. 6 hours later, They stood in Miami General's ICU, watching as Maria Williams was connected to dialysis machines that were literally keeping her alive. The blood tests had confirmed Harrison's worst fears: systematic poisoning with industrial toxins that had been slowly destroying her kidneys for months. Someone wanted her to die slowly, the attending physician explained. But the good news is that with aggressive treatment and eventual transplant, she should recover fully. How long? Amara asked. 6 to 8 months for full recovery, assuming we can find a compatible donor. Amara and Alexander looked at each other, both realizing that the surrogacy timeline had just become inextricably linked with Maria's survival. "Doctor," Alexander said, "what are the risks of pregnancy for someone under severe stress related to a family member's critical illness?" The question hung in the air as all three of them processed the collision of medical crises, family emergencies, and the complex arrangement that had brought them together. They were no longer just a potential father and surrogate mother. They were partners in a situation that could save or destroy multiple lives, depending on choices they'd have to make together over the coming months. 3 weeks into Maria's treatment in Miami, Alexander's security team detected the first signs of surveillance. Professional photographers with telephoto lenses positioned outside the hospital. Black SUVs with tinted windows following Amara to her medical appointments. Phone calls to his office asking detailed questions about his Caribbean business associates. "We have a problem," Harrison said, entering Alexander's penthouse through a service entrance at midnight. The Admiral looked haggard, his usual military precision replaced by the weariness of a man being hunted. "How bad?" Alexander asked, noting that Amara had gone pale beside him on the sofa. "Viktor Petrov's crew landed in Miami yesterday. 3 enforcers and a tracker. They've identified Maria's location and they know Amara is here." "Who's Viktor Petrov?" Amara asked. "The head of the arms trafficking network I was investigating. He lost $20 million in seized weapons because of my intelligence reports. He's been looking for revenge for 2 decades. Alexander stood, pacing to the windows that offered a panoramic view of Biscayne Bay. "What do they want?" "Initially, to eliminate Maria and Amara as a message to me. But now that they've done their research and discovered you're involved, they see an opportunity for a bigger payday." "Meaning?" "Meaning they're planning to kidnap Amara and hold her for ransom. $50 million and my surrender in exchange for her life." Amara set down her tea with trembling hands. "And if you don't surrender?" Harrison's silence was answer enough. "We need to move you both," Alexander said. "Tonight. Somewhere they can't track us." "Where exactly do you suggest?" Harrison asked. "These aren't street criminals, Alex. They have international resources, government contacts, sophisticated technology. Running will only delay the inevitable." "Then what do you propose?" "I propose we let them make their move and be ready for it." Alexander stared at him. "You want to use Amara as bait?" "I want to use myself as bait and keep Amara protected while we eliminate this threat permanently." "Absolutely not," Amara said firmly. "I won't be part of a plan that gets people killed." "Child, these people will kill you regardless of your moral objections," Harrison said gently. "The question is whether we control the confrontation or let them control it." A soft chime from Alexander's security system interrupted their debate. His head of security, Marcus Rodriguez, appeared on the video monitor. "Mr. Kane, we have 3 vehicles positioned at building exits. Professional surveillance. They're not trying to hide anymore." "How long do we have?" Alexander asked. "Unknown. But I'd recommend immediate relocation." Alexander made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. "No. We stay here. But we do it on our terms." He activated his building's executive emergency protocols, something he'd hoped never to use. Steel shutters descended over the windows. The elevator shut down except for authorized access. Private security flooded the building's common areas. "Alexander, what are you doing?" Amara asked. "I'm making this penthouse the safest place in Miami while we figure out how to eliminate this threat permanently." You can't just declare war on international criminals. Actually, I can. I have resources that Viktor Petrov doesn't expect. Legal, financial, and technological resources that can make him wish he'd never heard our names. Harrison looked impressed despite himself. What kind of resources? The kind that come with being married to a woman who spent 5 years documenting international arms trafficking for Doctors Without Borders. Sarah left me very detailed files about Viktor Petrov's operations. The revelation stunned both Harrison and Amara into silence. Sarah knew about this. Amara whispered. Sarah documented Petrov's network while providing medical aid in conflict zones. She gave that information to appropriate authorities, but she also kept copies as insurance. I never understood why until now. Alexander opened a wall safe, revealing flash drives and documents that Sarah had hidden for exactly this scenario. Your wife was investigating the same criminal network that Harrison was tracking? Amara asked. Your wife was building a case that could destroy Petrov's entire operation, Harrison said, scanning the documents. Financial records, shipping manifests, government contacts, everything we needed to shut him down permanently. So we don't run, Alexander said. We attack. We use Sarah's intelligence to give law enforcement everything they need to arrest Petrov and his entire organization. And if they retaliate before we can implement this plan, then we use the resources we have here to protect ourselves until the cavalry arrives. Marcus's voice came through the intercom again. Mr. Kane, we have movement. 3 men entering through the parking garage. They're armed and moving toward service elevators. Alexander felt adrenaline flood his system. How long until police arrive? 6 minutes for standard response. 12 minutes for tactical units. That's not fast enough, Harrison said. These men are professionals. They'll be in this penthouse in 4 minutes. Amara stood abruptly. Then we need a different plan. Such as? We give them what they think they want. Both men stared at her. Amara, no, Alexander began. Not me. Him. She pointed at Harrison. Viktor wants revenge against the man who destroyed his business. So let's give him the chance to face Harrison directly. You're suggesting I surrender myself? I'm suggesting we arrange a meeting where you're apparently vulnerable, but actually protected. Where Viktor thinks he's getting his revenge, but walks into a trap. Alexander felt grudging admiration for her strategic thinking. That could work. If we do it right. How do we do it right in 4 minutes? The building's alarm system activated as the intruders reached the penthouse level. Through the security monitors, they could see 3 armed men examining the reinforced door, clearly frustrated by the unexpected defenses. They're not going to wait for us to negotiate, Marcus reported. They're setting up breaching charges. Alexander made the hardest decision of his life. Marcus, let them in. Sir. Deactivate the locks. Let them into the penthouse. But make sure every movement is recorded and transmitted to law enforcement in real time. Alexander, that's insane, Amara protested. It's the only way to catch them in the act and get evidence that will put them away permanently. Harrison checked his sidearm, his military training taking over. How do you want to play this? You're the bait. Amara and I are the prizes they think they're claiming. But this entire penthouse is wired for sound and video. Every word they say, every threat they make, every crime they commit is being recorded for federal prosecutors. The penthouse door opened with a soft click. 3 armed men entered Alexander's living space, moving with the precision of military operatives. The leader, a scarred man in his 50s, smiled when he saw Harrison standing calmly in the center of the room. Admiral Harrison Mackenzie, Viktor Petrov said in accented English. 20 years I have been looking for you. Viktor, you look older. Prison will do that to a man. Prison where I spent 3 years because of your lies about my business operations. I didn't lie about anything. Your business operations involved selling weapons to terrorists. My business operations involved serving clients who paid well for quality merchandise. You destroyed that because of American moral superiority. Alexander stepped forward slightly, drawing Victor's attention. Mr. Petrov, I believe you're looking for me as well. Alexander Kane, the billionaire who thinks he can protect everyone with his money. Victor's smile was cold. Today you learned that money cannot stop bullets. The confrontation Alexander had hoped to avoid was about to begin, with Amara standing between two men who represented her past and her future, while criminals with nothing to lose decided who would live and who would die. Victor Petrov raised his weapon toward Harrison, but before he could fire, Amara stepped directly between them. Wait, she said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. Before you kill anyone, there's something you need to know about why we're really here. Victor's eyes narrowed. What game are you playing, girl? No game. Truth. Admiral Harrison didn't arrange this surrogacy to help Alexander Kane have a child. He arranged it because Sarah Kane was working for you. The words hit the room like a grenade. Both Alexander and Harrison stared at Amara in shock. That's impossible, Alexander said. Sarah was fighting against arms trafficking, not supporting it. Was she? Amara pulled out her phone, displaying documents she discovered while researching Sarah's medical missions. Look at the timing of her trips. Look at the funding sources for her humanitarian work. Look at which conflicts she documented and which ones she ignored. Victor lowered his weapon slightly, intrigued. Continue. Sarah Kane spent 5 years in war zones, supposedly providing medical aid. But she was actually documenting military capabilities, mapping strategic locations, and identifying potential weapons buyers for your organization. You're lying, Alexander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Victor, show him the financial records from your Caribbean operations. Show him who was receiving payments for intelligence gathering between 2018 and 2022. Victor's scarred face broke into a grin. The American doctor who thought she was saving the world. She was very useful to our operations. Sarah was working against you, Alexander insisted desperately. Sarah was working for the highest bidder, Victor replied. She provided medical cover for our shipping operations, documented opposition forces for targeting, and identified wealthy Americans who might be interested in private security arrangements. Alexander felt his world collapse. The cancer. The cancer was real, Victor said with mock sympathy. But it came from exposure to depleted uranium in weapons she helped us test. Ironic justice, yes. Harrison's face had gone ashen. Sarah recruited me to investigate Victor's network because she was feeding him information about American intelligence operations. And she identified Amara as the perfect surrogate because she knew Alexander would need consolation after learning the truth about his beloved wife, Victor continued. Sarah Kane planned this entire arrangement as her final gift to our organization. Amara felt sick as the implications became clear. She wanted Alexander to have a child that could be used as leverage against him later. A child with connections to military intelligence through Harrison, and to Caribbean operations through your family, Victor confirmed. Very valuable for future negotiations. Alexander's grief transformed into rage. So everything, the medical missions, the humanitarian work, our entire marriage, was a lie? Not everything, Victor said thoughtfully. She did love you. But she loved money more. And she loved the power that came with playing multiple sides against each other. Harrison stepped forward, his military bearing returning. Victor, you have your revenge against me. You've destroyed Alexander's faith in his wife. You've revealed the truth about Sarah's betrayal. What more do you want? I want the child this woman is carrying. Raised in my organization, trained from birth to continue Sarah's work. A perfect asset with American citizenship, family connections to military intelligence, and genetic ties to both your bloodlines. I'm not pregnant yet, Amara said quietly. But you will be. And when you are, you'll remain under our protection until the child is born and properly educated. Alexander realized with crystalline clarity that Victor intended to kidnap Amara, force the pregnancy to completion, and steal his child to raise as a criminal asset. "Over my dead body," he said. "That can be arranged," Victor replied, raising his weapon again. The gunshot that followed came not from Victor's weapon, but from Harrison's concealed sidearm. Victor staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, while his two companions raised their guns toward the Admiral. "Move!" Harrison shouted, diving behind Alexander's granite kitchen island. The penthouse erupted in gunfire as Victor's men sought cover and returned fire. Alexander grabbed Amara, pulling her behind an overturned couch while bullets shattered expensive artwork and marble fixtures. "The panic room," Alexander shouted over the gunfire. "Behind the bookshelf in my office." "What about Harrison?" "He can take care of himself. We need to survive this." They crawled across broken glass and splintered wood toward Alexander's home office while gunfire continued behind them. Harrison was holding his position, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. Alexander activated the hidden door to his panic room, a reinforced space designed to withstand exactly this kind of assault. As they sealed themselves inside, Amara grabbed his arm. "The recordings. Are they still transmitting?" "Everything is being sent directly to FBI servers in real time. Victor just confessed to international arms trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping on federal surveillance equipment. Will that be enough to stop him?" "It'll be enough to destroy his entire network once law enforcement analyzes the evidence." The gunfire outside intensified, then suddenly stopped. Through the panic room's monitors, they watched Victor's remaining men drag Harrison's unconscious form toward the penthouse exit. "They're taking him," Amara said. "They're making a mistake. Harrison has a tracking implant that activates during hostile situations. Military protocol for intelligence officers operating in enemy territory." Victor's voice came through the penthouse intercom system, which he'd somehow accessed. "Alexander Kane, I know you can hear me. Your military friend is badly wounded but alive. For now. You have 24 hours to bring the woman to the coordinates I'm sending to your phone. Come alone, or Admiral Harrison dies slowly and publicly." Alexander's phone chimed with a location, an abandoned warehouse in Miami's industrial district. "It's a trap," Amara said unnecessarily. "Of course it's a trap. But it's also an opportunity." "For what?" "To finish what Sarah started. The intelligence she collected wasn't just about Victor's operations, it was about destroying them. She was building a case that would eliminate his entire network, and now we have the evidence we need to complete her work. Even if that evidence was collected through betrayal and manipulation. Especially because it was collected through betrayal and manipulation. Victor trusted Sarah enough to show her everything. Now we use that trust against him." Alexander accessed Sarah's hidden files, uploading them to secure servers while simultaneously transmitting Victor's location to federal task forces that had been hunting him for years. "What about Harrison?" "Harrison is military intelligence. He knew the risks when he agreed to help us. But we're not leaving him to die if we can help it." "So what's the plan?" Alexander looked at the woman who had become far more important to him than any surrogacy arrangement could explain. "The plan is we give Victor exactly what he thinks he wants, while making sure he gets exactly what he deserves." Outside the panic room, sirens were beginning to wail as law enforcement responded to the recorded evidence of international terrorism, arms trafficking, and attempted kidnapping that had just been committed in a Miami penthouse. The hunt was ending, but the most dangerous part was just beginning. Victor Petrov had Harrison, but Alexander had something more valuable: the complete intelligence archive that could destroy everything Victor had built over 2 decades of criminal operations. The question was whether they could rescue Harrison before Victor realized that the woman he wanted to kidnap was about to become the key to his own destruction. The abandoned warehouse in Miami's industrial district looked exactly like the kind of place where people disappeared forever. Alexander parked his car at the specified coordinates while FBI tactical teams positioned themselves in a 3-block perimeter, invisible but ready to move on his signal. "You don't have to do this," Amara said for the 3rd time as they sat in the car, watching the sun set over the warehouse district. "I can call Victor myself, arrange a different meeting." "No. This ends tonight, and it ends with Victor in custody or dead." Alexander checked his concealed microphone one final time. Sarah's files contain bank account numbers for every government official Victor has bribed over the past decade. The moment we activate the transmission, his entire network collapses. And if something goes wrong? Then you disappear. New identity, new life, somewhere Victor's people will never find you. What about our child? The question stopped Alexander cold. Over the past week of running from assassins and discovering his dead wife's betrayals, he begun thinking of the potential pregnancy as theirs rather than his. If I don't survive this, you decide. Keep the baby, don't keep the baby, raise them to know who their father was, or let them grow up believing I was just a sperm donor. Your choice. Amara studied his face in the dying light. And if you do survive? If I survive, we figure out what we want to build together. Not what Sarah planned, not what Harrison arranged, not what Victor tried to steal. What we choose. Victor's voice crackled through Alexander's phone. Mr. Kane, you're 5 minutes late. That doesn't bode well for your military friend's health. I'm here. Where do you want me? Bay door 7. Come alone, hands visible, no weapons. Alexander and Amara exchanged one last look before he stepped out of the car. She would remain at the vehicle, ready to drive away if the situation went catastrophic, but close enough to activate the FBI signal if Alexander gave the code word. The warehouse interior was a maze of shipping containers and industrial equipment, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast jagged shadows across concrete floors. Victor waited in the center of the space, Harrison kneeling beside him with a gun pressed to his head. Punctual, Victor observed. I appreciate efficiency in business partners. We're not business partners. Not yet. But you will be, once you understand the full scope of what I'm offering. Alexander moved closer, noting the positions of Victor's men around the warehouse perimeter. What are you talking about? Your wife's final project. She didn't just document my operations for money, she was building something bigger. A legitimate business empire that could launder unlimited funds through humanitarian organizations. Victor gestured to shipping containers filled with what appeared to be medical supplies. Doctors Without Borders. Red Cross. United Nations Relief Operations. Every major humanitarian organization in the world, infiltrated and controlled by people who understand that charity is the perfect cover for moving money and weapons across international borders. Sarah was building a criminal empire disguised as humanitarian work. Sarah was building the future of international commerce. No government oversight, no taxation, unlimited access to conflict zones where traditional businesses cannot operate. Alexander felt sick as he realized the scope of his wife's betrayal. And you want me to continue her work? I want you to perfect it. You have resources Sarah never possessed, technology companies, government contracts, legitimate business relationships that can provide cover for operations she could only dream of. What makes you think I'd be interested in continuing my wife's criminal activities? Victor smiled coldly. Because the alternative is watching everyone you care about die slowly. Your military friend here. The beautiful Jamaican woman waiting in your car. Her dying mother in the hospital. Everyone becomes a target until you agree to partnership. And if I agree? If you agree, you become incredibly wealthy while providing valuable services to people who need weapons and money moved discreetly around the world. You maintain your respectable public image while enjoying the benefits of expanded business opportunities. Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice hoarse from injuries but clear enough to be understood. Alexander, don't listen to him. Sarah's files contain everything law enforcement needs to shut down his entire network. You don't have to negotiate. Victor pressed the gun harder against Harrison's temple. Your friend is correct about the files. But he's wrong about your options. I know you're wearing surveillance equipment. I know you've involved law enforcement. I know this is a trap. Alexander felt his blood freeze. Then why are you going through with this meeting? Because this isn't about capturing me anymore. This is about demonstrating what happens to people who try to use Sarah's information against my organization. Victor pulled a tablet from his jacket, showing Alexander live video feeds from Miami General Hospital. Your friend Maria Williams is currently in room 407, connected to dialysis machines that are keeping her alive. My people are in the hospital right now, posing as medical staff. The screen showed men in scrubs moving through hospital corridors with equipment that definitely wasn't medical. If I don't contact them every 15 minutes, Maria Williams dies from a tragic equipment malfunction. If law enforcement moves against this warehouse before I'm safely away, Maria Williams dies. If you try to arrest me using Sarah's files, Maria Williams dies. Alexander realized Victor had checkmated them. Any move they made against him would result in Maria's death, which would destroy Amara even if they succeeded in stopping his criminal network. What do you want? I want you to call off your law enforcement friends. I want Harrison transferred to my custody permanently. I want the Jamaican woman delivered to my people for the pregnancy arrangement we discussed. And I want your commitment to continue Sarah's work within my organization. And in exchange, Maria Williams survives, you become very wealthy, and everyone you care about remains alive as long as you follow our business guidelines. Alexander activated his concealed microphone, knowing that everything Victor had just said was being recorded for federal prosecutors. But the immediate crisis was Maria's life hanging in the balance. Victor, I need proof that Maria is still alive before I agree to anything. Of course. Victor made a phone call, and within moments Alexander's phone chimed with a video message showing Maria conscious and speaking his name. She has perhaps 30 minutes of life support remaining before my people need to adjust her medical equipment. Alexander made his choice. I agree to your terms. Release Harrison, guarantee Maria's safety, and I'll call off law enforcement. Excellent. And the woman? I'll bring her in. Alexander walked toward the warehouse entrance, knowing he was about to make the most dangerous gamble of his life. But he also knew something Victor didn't. Amara Williams was not the helpless surrogate mother Victor thought he was acquiring. She was the daughter of a military intelligence officer, and she had been listening to everything through the open phone connection. Victor was about to learn that underestimating the women in Alexander's life was the mistake that would finally destroy him. Amara was gone. Alexander returned to the parking spot where he'd left her, finding only his car keys and a handwritten note. Victor made one mistake. He assumed I've been helpless my whole life. Save Harrison. I'll save Mama. Trust me. Inside the warehouse, Victor was growing impatient. Mr. Kane, where is the woman? She's coming, Alexander lied, his mind racing through possibilities. Amara had disappeared, but she wasn't running away. She was implementing a plan she hadn't shared with him. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maria is safe. Equipment neutralized. Your move. Victor's phone rang at the same moment. He answered it with irritation, then his expression shifted to alarm as he listened to rapid-fire Spanish from the caller. Impossible, Victor muttered, ending the call. His eyes fixed on Alexander with new suspicion. My team at the hospital has gone silent. Equipment malfunction? Alexander suggested innocently. You played me. Victor raised his weapon toward Alexander's chest. Your woman wasn't the innocent surrogate I expected. No, she wasn't. The warehouse lights suddenly cut out, plunging the space into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, casting eerie red shadows across the industrial space. But in those crucial seconds of blackout, everything changed. Harrison was no longer kneeling beside Victor. 3 of Victor's men were on the ground, unconscious or worse. And Amara Williams stood on a shipping container 15 feet above them, holding weapons she definitely hadn't learned to use in nursing school. Jamaican nursing programs have some unusual requirements, she called down to Victor, including 6 months of training with military medical units. We learn to treat gunshot wounds, chemical exposure, explosive trauma. Very hands-on education. Victor spun toward her voice, but Harrison was already moving. 20 years of military training kicked in as the Admiral disarmed one of the remaining gunmen while diving for cover behind industrial equipment. The woman's father taught her well, Harrison shouted to Alexander. Military families don't raise helpless daughters. Gunfire erupted again as Victor's remaining men tried to establish defensive positions. But they were no longer fighting a billionaire and his elderly military friend. They were fighting a trained combat medic who had height advantage and intimate knowledge of their tactical positions. Amara moved across the warehouse infrastructure like she'd been born to it, using catwalks and overhead equipment to stay mobile while picking off Victor's men with precision that would have impressed her father. "This is impossible," Victor screamed, firing wildly at shadows. "She's a nurse. She's a Jamaican woman whose mother was slowly poisoned for months," Amara called back. "Do you think I spent that time crying, or do you think I spent it preparing for war?" Alexander realized that while he'd been falling in love with Amara's gentle kindness and moral character, he'd completely missed her tactical intelligence and warrior instincts. She'd been planning this confrontation since the day she learned about her mother's poisoning. Harrison appeared beside him, bleeding from several wounds, but operationally effective. "Cover the exits. Victor's going to run when he realizes he's lost." But Victor wasn't running. He was pulling a device from his jacket that made Alexander's blood freeze. A dead man switch connected to explosives that would level the warehouse and everyone in it. "If I can't have the woman and the child, no one can," Victor announced. "This warehouse becomes our collective grave." "Except I'm not in the warehouse anymore," Amara's voice came from outside the building. "And neither is anyone else who matters." The FBI tactical teams that had been waiting in the perimeter suddenly poured through every entrance, moving with precision that indicated they'd been coordinating with someone who knew the warehouse layout intimately. Victor found himself surrounded by federal agents while his dead man's switch became irrelevant. Amara had already identified and neutralized the explosive devices during her systematic dismantling of his defensive positions. Amara Williams, Agent Sarah Morrison, announced as she secured Victor in custody, former military combat medic, current nursing student, and temporary FBI consultant. "Thank you for your assistance in this operation." Alexander stared as the woman he thought he knew revealed herself to be someone entirely different. "FBI consultant? Harrison recruited me 6 months ago when he realized Victor's people were closing in," Amara explained as she climbed down from the container. "The surrogacy arrangement was real, but it was also cover for an extended intelligence operation. So everything, meeting me, agreeing to carry my child, falling in love, was part of an undercover assignment?" Amara paused in front of him, her expression serious. "The assignment was helping to capture Victor and protect my family. Falling in love with you was completely unplanned and definitely not authorized by federal agents." Harrison approached them, accepting medical attention from paramedics while maintaining his command presence. "Alexander, I'm sorry for the deception. But Amara volunteered for this operation when she realized it was the only way to eliminate the threat to her mother. And now Victor's network is destroyed, Maria is safe, and you two need to decide what you want to build together without anyone else's agenda interfering." 6 weeks later, Amara sat in Dr. Chen's fertility clinic, holding Alexander's hand while they reviewed the results of her latest medical tests. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Chen announced. "Your stress levels have normalized, your physical health is excellent, and if you're both ready to proceed, we can schedule the embryo transfer for next week." Alexander looked at Amara, still amazed by how much he'd learned about her strength and complexity over the past months. "Are you ready?" "I'm ready to have your child. I'm ready to build a family with you. I'm ready to discover what our life looks like when it's not shaped by other people's plans and schemes." Even though this started as a business arrangement? Especially because it started as a business arrangement. Now we know we're choosing each other for the right reasons. Dr. Chen smiled as she prepared the consent forms. "This is going to be one very lucky child, with parents who fought through everything to choose love over convenience." Outside the clinic windows, Miami stretched toward the ocean where Victor Petrov would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, where Harrison was recovering from his injuries while rebuilding his relationship with his daughter, and where Maria Williams was preparing to become a grandmother to a child conceived in chaos but born into peace. The surrogate who had never been kissed was about to become the mother of a child conceived in love rather than necessity. The billionaire who had thought he wanted a simple business transaction was about to become a father to a child who would inherit both his wealth and the warrior spirit of the woman who had saved them all. And the arrangement that had started with lies, manipulation, and hidden agendas was about to become the foundation for a family built on truth, trust, and the kind of love that could survive anything the world threw at them. 9 months later, they would welcome a daughter who would never know how close she came to being born into captivity, but who would grow up understanding that the strongest families are forged through adversity and that love is always worth fighting for. The end. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of love, betrayal, family secrets, and ultimate redemption. What did you think of Amara's transformation from innocent surrogate to FBI consultant warrior? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more powerful stories about the courage to fight for the people we love.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.